Hollywood's golden age is often remembered as a time of glitz, glamour, and larger-than-life stars who seemed untouchable. But behind the sparkle of fame, there were darker, untold stories of heartbreak and struggle. One of the most compelling and tragic tales belongs to Mary Nolan, a woman who rose from an orphanage to the heights of Hollywood stardom, only to be brought down by scandals, toxic relationships, and the harsh realities of an unforgiving industry. Her life was a roller coaster of soaring highs and devastating lows, and today we're diving into the incredible and heartbreaking story of Mary Nolan. Mary Nolan, whose real name was Mary Imogene Robertson, was born on December 18, 1902, in Louisville, Kentucky. If you think being born into a family of 5 siblings was lively, think again. Her childhood was far from a joyful picture. Mary's family was poor, and life was a constant uphill battle. At just 3 years old, her world turned upside down when her mother passed away. Imagine being so young and losing the one person who was your source of comfort. Her father, a carpenter with a frail frame and limited means, was suddenly left to raise 5 kids on his own. He tried his best, but the odds were stacked against him. When the family's financial struggles became unbearable, little Mary was sent to live with a foster family. But even that wasn't a long-term solution. Soon she found herself placed in a Catholic orphanage in St. Joseph, Missouri. Picture this: a little girl, just trying to make sense of the world, now living away from her siblings in a place that was completely unfamiliar. Yet, even amidst the hardships, Mary managed to leave an impression. The nuns at the orphanage nicknamed her Bubbles, likely because of her bubbly personality that shone through despite the challenges. The struggles didn't stop there, as if life wasn't already hard enough for young Mary. At just 10 years old, she was forced to step away from the relative stability of the orphanage to visit her eldest sister, Myrtle, who was gravely ill. Myrtle had recently given birth, and while she should have been enjoying the joys of motherhood, she was instead battling for her life. Tragically, Myrtle succumbed to tetanus, and if that wasn't heartbreaking enough, her infant son followed just 2 weeks later. Imagine the devastation for a little girl like Mary, watching her family members fade away one by one. For Mary, this wasn't just about losing a sister, it was about losing yet another anchor in her already chaotic world. She had barely begun to understand life, and yet she was being confronted with the harshest realities of it. Returning to the orphanage after such a heartbreaking ordeal must have felt like stepping back into isolation, carrying the emotional scars of loss that no child should have to bear. At such a young age, Mary was already learning that life could be cruel and unforgiving. The grief of losing her sister and nephew wasn't something she could leave behind at the orphanage's door. It stayed with her, shaping her in ways that would later manifest in her relationships, her career, and the way she carried herself in the face of public scrutiny. It was yet another reminder that, for Mary Nolan, life was never going to take the easy road. Mary's childhood wasn't just difficult, it was a constant fight for survival. But maybe that's why her later rise to fame had such an extraordinary shine to it. From the little girl nicknamed Bubbles in an orphanage to a future Hollywood starlet, Mary's story was just getting started. At just 13 years old, Mary Nolan left the orphanage and set off for New York City, where she reunited with her older sister Mabel. Now, Mabel wasn't just your average big sister. She was an actress married to actor Charles Rondo. Their lives were already deeply rooted in the world of theater, and for Mary, stepping into their home must have felt like entering an entirely new universe. Imagine going from the strict routines of an orphanage to the vibrant, chaotic, and exciting world of stage performers in New York City. It must have been a whirlwind. Mabel played a huge role in shaping Mary's future. She not only gave her a roof over her head, but also introduced her to the theater world, where glamour and creativity reigned supreme. This was Mary's first real taste of the entertainment industry, and it didn't take long for her to fall in love with it. Watching Mabel act and seeing the magic of live performances must have sparked something in young Mary, planting the seeds of ambition that would later drive her career in Hollywood. But Mabel wasn't just a mentor. She was also a lifeline. Having lost their mother at such a young age and being separated from her siblings for years, Mary found in Mabel a sense of family that she desperately needed. Their bond wasn't just about sharing a home, it was about rebuilding the connection that life's hardships had tried to sever. Mabel's husband, Charles Rondo, also played a part in shaping Mary's early steps into the limelight. Through their connections, Mary was introduced to people who could open doors for her in modeling and on the stage. This was where her journey truly began. New York City wasn't just a change of scenery for Mary. It was a place where she discovered a new version of herself, one with dreams far beyond the hardships of her past. Living with Mabel and Charles gave Mary the chance to explore a life she never thought possible. It was here that the girl who had been nicknamed Bubbles at the orphanage began transforming into the woman who would later captivate audiences on stage and screen. Mabel may have been the first person to see Mary's potential, and her encouragement helped set Mary on the path to stardom. Looking back, it's clear that this move to New York wasn't just a turning point for Mary. It was the spark that ignited her rise to fame. Mary Nolan's career was nothing short of a roller coaster, filled with dazzling highs and heartbreaking lows. Mary Nolan's modeling career was the foundation of her rise to fame, and it's no exaggeration to say she was a sensation before she even set foot on a stage or in front of a camera. Imagine being discovered in a city as bustling and competitive as New York during the Roaring '20s, where beauty and charm were as valuable as gold. Mary had both in spades. With her porcelain skin, striking blonde hair, and those piercing blue eyes, she was a natural muse for some of the era's most iconic illustrators. She worked with big names like James Montgomery Flagg, the man responsible for the famous Uncle Sam Wants You poster, a symbol of American patriotism. Posing for someone of his stature wasn't just an honor, it was a stamp of approval that Mary was a star in the making. Then there was Norman Rockwell, whose illustrations practically defined Americana. To say that Mary worked with Rockwell is like saying you were part of a dream team. Her beauty became immortalized through his art, capturing the imagination of audiences across the country. Mary didn't just model for magazine covers and ads. She became one of the leading Gibson girls, a title reserved for the epitome of early 20th century elegance and femininity. Charles Dana Gibson's Gibson girls were more than just pretty faces. They represented an ideal of sophistication and modernity, and Mary fit the bill perfectly. Being a Gibson girl meant that Mary's image was associated with class and aspiration, something that undoubtedly paved the way for her entry into the entertainment industry. Her modeling work also led her to the Artists and Models Club, a hub for creative talent in New York. It wasn't just a place where she could pose for illustrators. It was where she made connections, learned the art of self-presentation, and began to see the potential for a larger career. The club was a melting pot of creativity, and Mary quickly became one of its standout stars, catching the eye of influential people who could help her climb the ladder of success. By the early 1920s, Mary's face was everywhere. She wasn't just a model, she was the model. Her work with illustrators and artists helped her build a reputation as one of the most captivating faces of her time. And let's not forget, this was an era when magazines and advertisements were the main way people consumed media. Mary's image wasn't just admired, it was everywhere, inspiring women and mesmerizing men across the nation. Her modeling career wasn't just about beauty, though. It was about timing, networking, and ambition. Mary used her connections and growing fame to transition into the world of theater and eventually film. She understood that modeling was a stepping stone, and she wasn't going to let that opportunity go to waste. But modeling wasn't enough for Mary. She wanted the spotlight, and in 1922 she got her first taste of it. She made her stage debut in the musical comedy Daffy Dill, and it was here that her natural charisma began to shine. The audience couldn't take their eyes off her. Her performances were magnetic, and it wasn't long before she was cast in one of the most prestigious productions of the era, the Ziegfeld Follies. For those who don't know, being a Ziegfeld girl was like winning the golden ticket to fame back then. These women were the epitome of glamour and beauty, and Mary fit right in. She became a household name practically overnight, adored by fans and envied by many. Despite finding success in New York, Mary Nolan wasn't the kind of person to settle for being a big fish in a small pond. She had her eyes on the ultimate prize, Hollywood. She knew that the silver screen was where true legends were made, and Mary wanted to be one of them. So after building her reputation as a stage performer and even gaining international experience in Europe's film scene, she made a calculated move. In 1927, she returned to the U.S. with a new name, a new persona, and a clear mission: to take Hollywood by storm. By adopting the name Mary Nolan, she left behind her past as Imogene Wilson, signaling a fresh chapter in her life. The name wasn't just a change in identity. It was a brand makeover, designed to appeal to Hollywood's insatiable appetite for glamour and reinvention. Her arrival in Hollywood wasn't just noticed, it was celebrated. She quickly caught the attention of major studios, and it wasn't long before United Artists signed her. For Mary, this wasn't just another gig. This was the big break she had been waiting for. Hollywood, with its glittering lights and star-studded streets, was finally within her grasp. Her film career began to soar with standout performances in movies like West of Zanzibar and Desert Nights. These weren't just any films, they were heavy-hitting productions that paired her with some of the era's most iconic actors. In West of Zanzibar, she starred alongside Lon Chaney, a legendary actor known as the Man of 1,000 Faces. Working opposite someone of Chaney's caliber wasn't just an opportunity, it was a statement. Mary was being taken seriously as an actress, not just a pretty face. Her role in West of Zanzibar was especially challenging, as the film dealt with intense themes of revenge, betrayal, and redemption. Mary's character had to navigate layers of emotion, and she delivered a performance that was raw, heartbreaking, and utterly captivating. Critics were impressed by her ability to balance vulnerability with strength, and audiences couldn't look away. In Desert Nights, she continued to prove her versatility, holding her own in a silent film that required her to communicate volumes without saying a single word, a true testament to her skill. What set Mary apart wasn't just her undeniable beauty, but the depth she brought to her roles. Hollywood had no shortage of attractive actresses, but Mary had something more: an ability to connect with the audience on an emotional level. Whether she was playing a seductress, a victim, or a strong-willed heroine, Mary had a way of making people feel for her characters. But Hollywood is a tough town, and Mary's rise to fame wasn't without its challenges. Her personal life often overshadowed her professional achievements, and scandals began to follow her like a shadow. Yet for a brief moment, Mary Nolan was a shining star, captivating audiences with her beauty, charm, and undeniable talent. Her journey through modeling, stage, and film made her a standout figure of her time, and despite the hardships that would later come, her career remains a testament to her determination and resilience. Mary's story proves that even in the golden age of Hollywood, the path to stardom was anything but easy. Mary Nolan's life in Hollywood wasn't just a tale of glamour and success. It was also marked by scandal after scandal, each one more shocking than the last. If the silver screen made her a star, the tabloids made her infamous. Her personal life, filled with toxic relationships and public controversies, often overshadowed her talent. One of the earliest and most damaging scandals was her tumultuous relationship with Frank Tinney, a married comedian nearly 20 years her senior. What started as a whirlwind romance quickly turned into a nightmare. Tinney showered Mary with gifts and promises, but behind closed doors, he was abusive and controlling. He had a violent temper, often fueled by alcohol, and Mary bore the brunt of his rage. The public got a glimpse of their toxic relationship when, during a particularly volatile fight, Mary took legal action against him for assault. The case became a media frenzy, with Mary testifying about the abuse and even admitting to multiple attempts to end her own life due to the violence she endured. Tinney, on the other hand, brushed off the accusations, portraying Mary as a dramatic, hysterical actress looking for attention. The trial painted a harrowing picture of Mary's personal life, and while she bravely stood her ground, the ordeal left her reputation in tatters. If that wasn't enough, Mary's next relationship was with MGM fixer Eddie Mannix, a man with connections to organized crime and a reputation as one of the most ruthless men in Hollywood. At first, Mary fell for his charm, describing him as masculine in every sense of the word. But just like with Tinney, the relationship soon turned dark. Mannix was abusive, and one of his violent outbursts left Mary critically injured, requiring multiple surgeries and a long recovery. The physical and emotional scars from this relationship pushed Mary into a downward spiral. Her struggles didn't end with her relationships. By the early 1930s, rumors of drug use began to surface, further tarnishing her already fragile reputation. In 1930, Mary became the subject of a narcotics investigation after nurses who had treated her reported seeing injection marks on her arms. While no concrete evidence was found, the mere suggestion of drug addiction was enough to cause a public uproar. Hollywood at the time had a strict moral code, and allegations like these could end a career overnight. Mary claimed the accusations were part of a smear campaign to sabotage her career, but the damage was done. The whispers about her alleged drug use followed her everywhere, making it even harder for her to find work in an industry that was quick to turn its back on fallen stars. Mary Nolan's financial troubles were as dramatic as the scandals that plagued her personal life. In 1931, at the height of her struggles, Mary shocked the public by declaring bankruptcy. She disclosed debts that amounted to nearly $93,000, an astronomical sum at the time, against assets of only about $3,000. It was a stark contrast to the glamorous image of a Hollywood starlet. For someone who had once been the epitome of beauty and success, it was a sobering revelation of how far she had fallen. Mary's spending habits were part of the problem. She had developed a taste for extravagant European fashions and luxury goods during her time abroad, and her inability to curb these impulses left her drowning in debt. To make matters worse, her career was already on a downward trajectory, and the lack of steady income meant she couldn't dig herself out of the financial hole she had created. But the financial chaos didn't stop with the bankruptcy filing. Around the same time, Mary found herself at the center of a bizarre legal dispute involving a missing rug. The story goes that Mary allegedly took a valuable rug from a property she had rented and offered it as partial payment for medical bills. The doctor who received the rug claimed He had no idea it was someone else's property, but the incident led to yet another court appearance for Mary. While the case might sound almost comical, it only reinforced the perception that Mary was unstable and unreliable, someone constantly mired in controversy. Her financial woes didn't end there. That same year, Mary opened a dress shop in Beverly Hills with her then-husband, millionaire broker, Wallace T. McCreary. However, the timing couldn't have been worse. Just before their wedding, McCreary lost a significant portion of his fortune, over $3 million, due to the stock market downturn. With only $9,000 left between them, the couple poured everything into the shop, hoping it would be a fresh start. Unfortunately, the business failed to take off, and the mounting debts only added to Mary's growing list of problems. By August 1931, things had spiraled even further out of control. Mary faced allegations of unpaid wages from her employees, including her cook, chauffeur, and nurse. She was arrested after ignoring multiple court summonses, and her public humiliation deepened as reports of her financial mismanagement dominated the headlines. Even fan clubs, which had once rallied to her defense, began to dwindle as Mary's reputation took hit after hit. The final blow came in 1932 when Mary and McCreary were convicted of 17 labor law violations for failing to pay their employees. They were fined $1,300, a significant sum for someone already bankrupt, and Mary was sentenced to 30 days in jail. The once celebrated starlet who had graced magazine covers and film screens was now sitting in a jail cell, a far cry from the glamorous life she had once led. Despite the scandals, Mary still had fans who adored her and sympathized with her struggles. Fan clubs rallied to her defense, showing that she still had the public support even when Hollywood and its studios had written her off. But the combination of abusive relationships, public controversies, and professional setbacks created a storm that Mary couldn't escape. Mary Nolan's brief and turbulent marriage to millionaire broker Wallace T. McCreary was yet another chapter in her roller coaster life, full of hope, but ultimately ending in heartbreak. In 1931, when Mary tied the knot with Wallace, it seemed like she was finally getting a fresh start. McCreary was wealthy, successful, and appeared to be someone who could provide Mary with the stability she desperately needed. For a moment, it must have felt like a fairy tale. A Hollywood star marries a millionaire, ready to build a glamorous life together. But as with many things in Mary's life, the story quickly turned into a tragedy. Just a week before their wedding, disaster struck. McCreary lost over $3 million in a single day during the stock market downturn, wiping out nearly his entire fortune. The timing couldn't have been worse, and while most newlyweds are busy planning their honeymoon, Mary and Wallace were already scrambling to figure out how to survive financially. Despite their best efforts to keep things afloat, the weight of their money problems quickly became overwhelming. In a desperate attempt to turn their fortunes around, the couple invested the last of Wallace's wealth, around $9,000, into opening a dress shop in Beverly Hills. The shop was supposed to be their fresh start, a way to rebuild both their finances and their future together. But the Great Depression was in full swing, and luxury dress shops weren't exactly thriving. The business struggled, and instead of bringing them closer, the financial strain only drove a wedge between them. To make matters worse, Hollywood wasn't kind to married women, especially ones like Mary, whose career and reputation had already taken several hits. There was a prevailing belief at the time that actresses couldn't remain glamorous or desirable on screen if they were tied down by marriage. Mary herself admitted this in a later interview, saying, "Hollywood didn't want me to be married. Everything I do is wrong, even when it's the right thing." By 1932, just a year after saying "I do," Mary and Wallace's marriage was over. The financial stress combined with the pressures of Hollywood and Mary's ongoing personal struggles proved to be too much. The couple divorced, and Mary later reflected on their short-lived union with a mix of regret and resignation. "We thought money didn't matter," she said, "but it did." Mary Nolan's life wasn't just defined by her tumultuous romances. Her relationships with Hollywood directors, producers, and other influential figures played a huge role in shaping both her career and her downfall. Some of these connections helped her rise to stardom, while others dragged her into the kind of scandals that made headlines for all the wrong reasons. Take her relationship with MGM's infamous fixer, Eddie Mannix, for example. Mannix wasn't just any Hollywood executive. He was the guy studios turned to when they needed their problems to disappear, whether that meant cleaning up a scandal or silencing someone who knew too much. Mary fell for him, describing him as masculine in every sense of the word, but the relationship quickly became toxic. Mannix was known for his connections to the mob and his violent tendencies, and Mary became another victim of his abusive behavior. One particularly brutal incident left her so badly injured that she required multiple surgeries and spent weeks recovering in a hospital. This relationship not only scarred her physically, but also further tarnished her reputation in an industry that was quick to turn its back on troubled stars. But Mannix wasn't the only influential figure in Mary's life. Early in her career, she crossed paths with powerful producers and directors who saw her as a rising star and as someone they could manipulate. Hollywood in the 1920s and 1930s was a tough place for women, especially those as beautiful and ambitious as Mary. For every door that opened for her, there seemed to be a hidden cost. Some producers helped her land roles that showcased her talent, but others saw her as little more than a pawn in their own games of power and control. Her time in the Ziegfeld Follies introduced her to influential figures in the New York theater scene, but even there, the relationships were complicated. Mary's charm and beauty made her a favorite among wealthy patrons and theater insiders, but it also made her a target for unwanted attention. While these connections sometimes helped her advance her career, they also fed into the gossip mill, painting her as a woman who used her looks to get ahead. Then there were the photographers, journalists, and other members of the press who played a significant role in shaping Mary's public image, for better or worse. Early in her career, journalists couldn't get enough of her. Her beauty and charisma made her a favorite for magazine covers and glowing profiles. But as her personal life became more chaotic, the tone of the coverage shifted. The same press that had once celebrated her now seemed eager to tear her down, fueling the scandals that overshadowed her talent. Even her friendships in Hollywood came with complications. As an actress, Mary worked alongside some of the biggest stars of her time, but the industry's competitive nature often turned friends into rivals. Gossip about her relationships and behavior on set spread like wildfire, making it harder for her to maintain professional and personal connections. In a town where alliances were often based on convenience rather than loyalty, Mary found herself increasingly isolated. Mary Nolan's life, filled with dazzling fame and devastating hardship, ended tragically on October 31st, 1948. She was just 46 years old, and by then the glamour of her Hollywood days was long behind her. Mary died of an apparent overdose, with many speculating that it might have been a suicide. Her death wasn't just the end of a life. It was the closing chapter of a story that perfectly captured the harsh realities behind Hollywood's golden facade. In her final years, Mary was a shadow of the star she had once been. She lived in a small, modest bungalow at 1504 South Mansfield Avenue in Los Angeles, far removed from the opulent mansions of Hollywood's elite. Her living space was humble, but it held one treasured possession: a grand antique piano that had once belonged to Rudolph Valentino, the legendary silent film star. The piano was more than just a piece of furniture. It was a symbol of her past glory, a reminder of a time when she was adored and admired by millions. According to her sister Mabel, Mary clung to that piano as if it were a lifeline, keeping a picture of Valentino on the music rack. It was as though the piano allowed her to hold on to the fleeting memory of her own greatness during moments of deep discouragement. By the late 1940s, Mary's health had deteriorated significantly. She had been battling severe malnutrition, with her weight dropping to just 80 pounds. Her physical condition was compounded by ongoing health issues, including gallbladder problems that required treatment. Despite her fragile state, Mary seemed determined to regain control of her story. In the months leading up to her death, she had begun working on her memoirs with the help of author Jack Preston. During one of their conversations, Mary confided, "I'm going to die." It was a chilling statement, one that hinted at her awareness of how little time she had left. On the night of October 30th, 1948, Mary's health took a sudden and dramatic turn. A neighbor, Edward Gallagher, discovered her in distress and immediately called her sister Mabel, who contacted a doctor. Despite their efforts, Mary's condition worsened. Early the next morning, she was found unresponsive. An autopsy later revealed that she had died of an overdose of Seconal, a barbiturate commonly used as a sedative. A note found near her body added a layer of mystery to her death. Scribbled on the back of a child's prayer by William Holly Smith, the note read, "If this were only true." Whether the overdose was accidental or intentional remains unclear, but the note's haunting words have led many to believe that Mary's death was a final quiet cry for peace. Even in death, Mary's story captivated the public. The image of a once glamorous star, alone in her bungalow, surrounded by memories of a bygone era, painted a poignant picture of the price of fame. Her tragic end was a stark reminder of how Hollywood could build someone up only to cast them aside when the spotlight faded. Mary Nolan's life is a powerful reminder of how fleeting fame can be and the heavy price that often comes with it. From her challenging childhood to her meteoric rise in Hollywood and the scandals that followed her every step, Mary's story is both inspiring and heartbreaking. Even in her final years, as the lights of Hollywood faded, her legacy as a captivating performer and a cautionary tale endured. Mary Nolan may no longer grace the silver screen, but her story continues to echo through history as a haunting glimpse into the cost of chasing dreams in a world that doesn't always forgive. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned as we uncover more untold stories from Hollywood's golden age.